Florida State had a wildly successful season this year, and that makes what we're going to talk about today probably even more difficult to grasp and maybe a little bit more difficult for it to actually happen. As a quick disclaimer before we get into this, I don't necessarily like the idea of saying that anyone should lose their job. It's their livelihood. It's a sense of pride for them. It is certainly not a fun situation for anyone to be in. But there are times when performance just isn't at the level that many people think it should be, and decisions have to be made. Now, ultimately, those decisions lie with the head coach or an athletic director at a university when it comes to football, and those aren't necessarily decisions that a fan should be making or will be making. But fans can read the writing on the wall, and oftentimes fans who are as invested into this sport and this Florida State football program are. And a lot of times fans can see what needs to happen. The old adage is if it should be done eventually, it should just be done immediately. And so let's talk about something that may be a little bit uncomfortable, but should Florida State and Mike Norvell be moving on from some coaches here in the very near future? And ultimately, will they be doing that? Yesterday on the Jeff Cameron show, Jeff, who is the local legend in Tallahassee radio, said, "I'm a broken record with this. I don't love our linebacker coach. I don't think he recruits worth a damn, and I don't think we're seeing a lot of development at that position. So if he wanted to take it on down the road, I'd be fine with that." His producer, Tom Lang, jumped in and said, "Other than that, he's kicking ass." And they both had a laugh about that. And then Jeff finished up by saying, "So you know where I'm at with this. It's one of those things where years ago, maybe I'd be beating on the table about the need to fire somebody, but I can just state it very clearly now and move on. And that is that I would fire Randy Shannon. I would not have hired Randy Shannon, and I would have fired him hours ago." Now, I know that's uncomfortable. This is not a fire Randy Shannon move. I don't think that Mike Norvell would fire any coaches outside of some kind of a breach of contract, some kind of, immoral happening. I think that most of the time Mike's going to help coaches find another opportunity. So I'm not calling for anybody's job. I'm not saying that someone should be fired or multiple coaches should be fired, relocated, rehomed, maybe is a better way to put that, because that's what Mike would ultimately do. That's what he did with Chris Marv a couple of years ago. That's what he did with Coach Woodson last year. You saw the upgrade at secondary coach with Pat Surtain. You see how that's paid benefits and dividends as well. But would Coach Norvell do that with other positions? Should he do that with other positions? I won't be as bold as Jeff. I certainly don't have or carry the weight that Jeff does in this market or with this fan base, but I do think Florida State is lacking at a couple of positions right now. I think that Florida State is lacking at that linebacker position. And I think the recruiting there has not been very good. In fact, I think it's probably been the worst on the team over the last couple of years. The one bright spot that I think you'd say with linebacker recruiting was Blake Nicholson. And you basically got him because they were a family friend of Derek Ray. I think the recruiting's not been very good there. I think that in the portal, they've done okay. Picking up Bethune was big. Obviously, that's somebody that Randy had recruited when he was at UCF. And then they developed Deloach really, really well. They developed Lundy, but aren't going to see the fruits of those labors as he's now in Colorado. So, yeah, I think the linebacker position is somewhere that they have certainly struggled. I also think defensive end is somewhere that they have very much struggled. Now, they've done a good job in the portal there. Don't take anything away from it. Keir Thomas, Jermaine Johnson, Jared Verse, now Marvin Jones Jr. I think they've done a good job there. But outside of Pat Payton, really haven't recruited that position exceptionally well, and they also haven't developed there exceptionally well. Pat Payton is the exception to that. And I think even at defensive tackle, and I know that's probably where it gets the most sensitive amongst FSU fans, I think they're somewhat lacking there as well. Now, we'll get to defensive tackle in just a moment, but on defensive end and on linebacker, you've got to see improvement there, and you've got to get better. Will changes be made at those positions? I will get to that in just a moment. Is it possible that we see changes there? Again, we'll talk about that in just a moment. We'll talk about kind of what Mike values. But first, I do want to tell you, if you're not already in our Discord, if you're not already part of our Patreon membership, you can join that today. It's the beginning of the year. You need to get in there. There is a year-long discount, but you need to go join our Patreon and get in the Discord. Portal season is going nuts right now. We're talking about different prospects at all times of the day, literally 24 hours. I would suggest turning the notifications off unless maybe you get the all at tag, but go check out our Discord. It's free to join. There is an upgraded membership that you can get for $3 at patreon.com/DFNS. So go check that out and join us today over there. Will Mike Norvell make changes? Do you think that we're up to the standards that we need to be at defensive end and at linebacker? Honestly, defensive tackle too. I'm not sure. I think that Mike Norvell very much values developers over recruiters. I think he values guys that can coach kids up. Why? Because I think that's who Mike Norvell is. I think Mike Norvell is a developer. He's a coacher, not a stone cold recruiting killer. Mario Cristobal, the exact opposite. He's a terrible in-game coach. He's a horrible developer. Guys consistently underperform under him. When he came into Miami, he talked about how he had a Heisman Trophy caliber, first-round caliber quarterback. And a couple of years later, Tyler Van Dyke is not even beating out Emory Jones or Ja'Cory Brown for playing time. Mario Cristobal is not a good coach, but he's a great recruiter. He's a phenomenal recruiter. And Mike Norvell to me is the opposite. There's no problem with being the opposite, but Mike hasn't shown the ability to be able to close on elite targets. You have continued to see that really in Florida State's last few signing days, and I won't rehash all of that. There's no reason to rip open those scabs that are pretty fresh anyway. But I think Mike values development more than he values a stone-cold killer recruiter. But at this point, the way that our trenches look on the defensive side of the ball, the way that our front seven looks on the defensive side of the ball is concerning. It's concerning for years to come. I don't know what the heck the Noles are going to do at linebacker in 2024. That's this season. Now, they're on some other guys. They're bringing some other guys in through the portal and having visits right now. I would expect that Justin Cryer, the transfer from Northwestern last year, who played okay in the bowl game, graded out okay, will play there. Blake Nicholson, you'd hope can get in and play some. Omar Graham, you'd hope can get in and play some. I don't know that you can count on Omar to be an every down linebacker. I'd love for him to prove me wrong because we're desperate right now. I don't know that Blake's ready to be an every down linebacker. We'll see. But you're going to need some more bodies in the portal. You're going to need some more depth there. And I don't know what the heck they do at linebacker this year. Defensive line, I think, is in a pretty good spot for 2024. But past that, when Darrell Jackson and Josh Farmer and Pat Payton are all gone, when Marvin Jones Jr. could be gone as well, you just missed out on Nick Scrouton, who people thought you had a great chance to land, but the Purdue transfer goes to A&M. I think you're in trouble on that defensive line. Now, could you develop more 3-stars into Josh Farmer types? Absolutely. Maybe Denaz White is developed into that. Maybe others are developed into that. Maybe D.D. Holmes is a really solid play for you in a couple of years. But the defensive line right now and the linebacker room are both very, very concerning. And the recruiting there just has not been good enough. At the end of the day, Mike Norvell preaches that we are getting 1% better every day. Every day, we just get a little bit better. We don't have to take massive leaps. We don't have to take massive jumps, massive steps. We need to get 1% better as a program every day. And I don't believe, as much as I believe in Mike Norvell, and as much as I believe he is the right guy to lead this program, I don't believe that the defensive end and the linebacker recruiting have us getting 1% better every day. I think they have us doing the opposite. We're not even staying stagnant. We're getting worse. Our defensive line in 2024, minus some massive portal hits that come out of absolute nowhere with the portal being closed, there is no way that our defensive line in 2024 is going to be as good as it was in 2023. Let me tell you what's even more worrisome. There is no way that it is going to be better in 2025 than it is in 2024, unless, again, you hit on some massive portal guys. But as you've already seen, they've already missed on the number one defensive end, the edge prospect that went to Texas A&M, so their Jared Verse replacement is no longer available. Want to go even a step further? I'm worried about what the linebackers look like this year. As though I'm not worried about 2024's defensive line, I am worried about our linebackers this season. And next year's linebackers, it's even more scary because we just haven't recruited that position well enough. It is 3-star after 3-star after 3-star after 3-star after 3-star. Randy Shannon gets in on guys late. He doesn't close well. He doesn't get guys to visit. He slow plays. And it just hasn't been good enough. Same thing with Coach Papp. I know he's done a good job with special teams. He's done a phenomenal job with special teams. It won you the LSU game. It has been huge for you in different areas. But the recruiting has just not been good enough. The miss today on Scrouton from Purdue, not even getting him on campus. I understand that's a Texas kid. I understand he's close to A&M. But you were the first one to set up a visit, and he never even showed up at your school. That's big time. The other recruits that you've missed out on, we've talked about them over and over and over again. I don't know that we have to rehash it, but Marvin Jones Jr. the first time, and Ruben Bain, and Keldrick Falk, and, of course, LJ McCray this year. Just not good enough. I hear things all the time that would make you guys' heads turn on the attitude of recruiting at those positions. And to me, if Mike Norvell is okay with it and Mike Norvell allows it, then he's complicit. Now, if Mike Norvell's okay continuing to pull in 1 or 2 3-star linebackers a year and hoping that that works out for our linebacker room going forward, then he should keep Randy Shannon employed. He shouldn't try and find him a new home. If he's okay with us consistently finishing second, Ruben Bain, Marvin Jones Jr., Keldrick Falk, and LJ McCray for the top defensive end prospects, then we should keep Coach JP there. I'm okay with it. If that's Mike Norvell is okay with that, then I'm good with it. But continuing to do the same thing and expecting results that are different is, you guys know. And so we'll see, right? But we are certainly lacking in recruiting in those areas. Not at most positions, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, secondary, all really good. But we haven't done a good enough job, in my opinion, at the defensive line and the linebacker positions. Now, can things improve? Absolutely. A couple of years ago, Ron Dugans was not given a 2-year contract. He was put on a 1-year contract because Florida State was looking to replace him. And when Mike Norvell wasn't able to, he stuck with Dugans, and Dugans has turned it around since then and brought in some really good talent, some really elite talent at that position, both through the portal and high school. And that is something that is possible to change. But I'll tell you, it very rarely happens. Leopards don't change their spots often. Can linebacker recruiting, can defensive end recruiting, can defensive tackle recruiting get better? Absolutely. Will it? I'm not sure. Just because Dugans was able to turn around doesn't necessarily mean that others will be able to, or even have the desire to, even have the want to be able to do it. What would I do if I was in this situation? Well, again, this is obviously up to Norvell, and I'm not saying that anyone needs to be fired. I'll let Cameron say that. But I'd probably try and rehome some guys. I'd probably try and move some guys around. I would do my best to have a new linebackers coach that will go out and recruit elite talent. When Florida State was winning national titles, they were recruiting elite talent at every position, but especially the linebacker. You look at Derek Brooks, you look at Marvin Jones Jr., you look at the Bulwer, you look at Telvin Smith and others that played on each championship team. There are dogs playing linebacker, and it is so important. I thought the biggest issue in the Georgia debacle of an Orange Bowl was the linebacker play. I thought defensive line held their own for who was playing in there, but linebacker play was just awful, and it's because there's no depth there. There is no one there that could even get close to bringing down any of those Georgia backs. Linebacker play was atrocious. I would move on from Randy Shannon. I'd find him a new home. I wouldn't unceremoniously, disgracefully fire him, send out a tweet, see ya. I'd try and find him a new role, try and find him a new job, and move on from there. I'd probably do the same thing at defensive end. I know a lot of people like Pap. A lot of people like Coach Papuchas. That's fine. I think they're good guys. I don't have anything against them personally. I just don't think the results are good enough there to warrant it. I know I'm going to get a lot of comments talking about the portal. I know we're going to get a lot of comments talking about how good he's done bringing in Jared Verse, how good he's done bringing in Jermaine Johnson. I think that Mike Norvell and Adam Fuller have a lot to do with those guys as well. And so I don't know that I give him 100% of the credit for recruiting those guys. I think he did a great job once they got to campus, and he got the absolute most out of them. But if you can't get the most out of Jared Verse, an athletic freak monster that he is, then there might be something wrong right there. I think recruiting just hasn't been good enough at the high school level, and you can't continue to hit grand slams in the portal year after year after year. And we've proved it here this year by missing on the Purdue kid to A&M. I think I'd move on from those two positions, and I would look for a new linebackers coach, and I would look for somebody who could maybe have a dual role of a special teams coordinator and then a stone cold nasty recruiter, kind of a Tim Brewster in his prime type recruiter. Then I'd let Odell coach the entire defensive line. I'm not necessarily moving on from Odell. If Odell retires, then great. That's his decision. If he doesn't, I think he's earned still being on this staff. But I think you bring in a special teams guy and a recruiter to help Odell along that defensive line. Odell can certainly coach both D tackles and D ends. He can develop at both positions. He's done it before. And so you have a D-line coach, you have a special teams guy, maybe an assistant D-line coach that can come in and really help him recruit that position better. And you have the emphasis and the focus on special teams that you've had with JP. Is this what happens? I've got no idea. I would lean towards 0 staff changes more than I would lean towards 2 or more, for sure. Does one happen? Does one person find a new home? Does one person get a new job? Maybe. But I would lean towards no new jobs happening. That's unfortunate to say. Just based on what I'm hearing, I don't necessarily see a lot of people moving on. I do think the chatter is getting louder. I think that you've got folks at Warchant with Jeff Cameron going on a rant yesterday. You've got folks at 247 that have kind of made their feelings known. And the fan base chatter is coming a little more too. I don't think we're anywhere close to this, but when you look at what led to the downfall of Jimbo and when you look at what led to the downfall of others, it ended up being when they wouldn't make changes at different coaching positions that needed to be made. Whether that was Charles Kelly or just whomever. And so what ends up happening here, I'm not sure. I don't know where it ends up going. I don't know what ends up happening with any of it, but I do know that if changes aren't made, we're probably going to be expecting a lot of the same results. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I know there's going to be hot takes on this. I know that words on this are going to get twisted. I tried to be very polite with this. I tried to be very delicate with it. I'm not calling for people's jobs. I just don't think that we're doing a good enough job and living up to the standard at Florida State in certain areas. Go join our Patreon. Go join our Discord if I haven't pissed you off too far with this. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Have a little bit happier video next time we do one. But thank you guys for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm always open to it. Talk to you guys soon. Go Noles.